right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Canadian Energy Museum. My name is Andrew Boychenko, and I'm MLA for Drayton Valley, Devon, as well as Parliamentary Secretary to Indigenous Relations. I want to start by acknowledging the significance of where we are today for this announcement. Leduc number 1 was not Alberta's first oil discovery place. In fact, the discovery here was preceded by multiple other ventures across the rest of our province. However, it was the discovery here that fully revealed our province's potential as future hub for global energy. In 1947, our province's most impressive oil reserves were unlocked, and the resulting boom in development transformed this area in our province and the rest of Canada. In the decades that have followed the discovery, our provinces has developed a breadth of talent, a skilled workforce, and a regulatory environment for energy and drilling that is the envy of much of the world. Though drilling has mostly moved elsewhere in our province, energy and discovery are still key components of my constituents' identities. For this reason that this spot is especially fitting for hosting today's announcement of the Alberta Drilling Accelerator. This program will continue our province's legacy as a leader in drilling innovations and allowing us to leverage our existing expertise to capitalize on global demand for new and more efficient geothermal technologies, establishing Alberta as a global hub and export leader in this emerging energy sector. I want to thank the Canadian Energy Museum for not only hosting us today, but for this announcement, but also for their ongoing work to share Alberta's energy story. As the local MLA, I'm happy to welcome today in our constituency of Drayton Valley, Devon, several important guests. As a special thank you to our Premier Danielle Smith for taking the time to be here today for today's announcement. I would also like to thank my colleague and Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, Rebecca Schulz, for not only being here today, but for ongoing work to keep our energy sector prosperous and sustainable. I would also like to welcome industry representatives, John Redfern, President and CEO of Ever Technologies, John Gorman, Vice President of Halliburton's operations in Canada and West Coast United States, and Alan Bush, Vice President of Corporate Affairs with Tourmaline Oil. I look forward to hearing more from all of you today for what the Alberta Drilling Accelerator means for you, for Drayton Valley, Devon, and for the rest of our province. And now, I would like to welcome our Honorable Premier, Danielle Smith, to provide more remarks. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thanks, Andrew. Well, thanks, Andrew. I'm happy to be here once again with Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, Rebecca Schulz, as well as John Redford with Ever, John Gorman with Halliburton, Alan Bush with Tourmaline. I want to welcome you all to one of the most important historical sites in our province. On this spot in 1947, in the dead of an Alberta winter, an exploration team drilled through a layer of bedrock almost a mile deep and struck oil. That fateful discovery marked the start of Alberta's modern energy industry, and it shaped our destiny as a province ever since. So much of Alberta's future prosperity and economic power can be traced back to this spot and the efforts of an intrepid team of drillers 77 years ago. And we're here today to write the next chapter for drilling in this province. It's no exaggeration to say that Alberta's drillers are the best in the world. They've been completing and installing production equipment in some of the most challenging underground environments on Earth, often in remote and inhospitable locations, and in temperatures that can swing 70 degrees between winter and summer. Pretty much any onshore drilling technique you can think of has been tried out, fitted for purpose, and perfected right here in Alberta. That means that there is a huge supply of hard-earned drilling expertise in this province, but there's never really been a place for the experts to flex their creativity and to try out new techniques, until now. I'm pleased to announce that our government will be investing up to $50 million to support the Alberta Drilling Accelerator. This open access test site will enable industry partners to test out innovative approaches to this most Albertan of activities. Now, obviously, this means big things for oil and gas exploration in our province, but drilling is required for other parts of Alberta's economy too, including industries that will be vital for achieving our goal of carbon neutrality by 2050, like carbon sequestration or geothermal energy, which has the potential to be the next frontier in Alberta energy. Drilling is also a key element of mining activities like critical mineral extraction and our province's growing helium industry. By providing a test site for new drilling techniques, we'll be expanding our already vast knowledge base, and keeping Alberta out in front as a preferred global energy provider. And supporting the development of technology the world desperately needs to support its sustainability goals. This project will also support our long-term goals for Alberta's economy. 20 or 30 years from now, we envision operators being able to scale and sell their homegrown expertise by developing and manufacturing drilling technology that can be used around the world. What we're doing here today is setting the stage for innovation and prosperity far into the future. And we're not alone. We know there's major interest in this project among Alberta's industry players. That includes Ever, Calgary's own geothermal technology leader, which has been involved in the drilling accelerator since our initial feasibility study. It also includes natural gas giant Tourmaline, as well as Halliburton, one of the world's largest and most recognizable oil field service companies. These three operators represent a small fraction of the drilling expertise in our province and a small sample of the potential users for this open access test site when it's completed. Because alongside our $50 million investment, we expect the Alberta Drilling Accelerator to attract tens of millions of dollars in private investment. We can't wait to get moving on this, and in collaboration with our industry partners to start pushing Alberta's drilling expertise to places that it's never been before. With that, I'd like to invite Minister Schulz to share a few more words.
Thank you so much, Premier, and thank you, MLA Boychenko, for hosting us here today. Of course, as Premier mentioned, demand around the world continues to rise for more safe, affordable, reliable energy for homes, for businesses, and for economies to grow. Alberta has had a long and proud history of responsible oil and gas development. We are increasing production, reducing emissions, all while meeting those rising demands for energy for years to come. This is thanks to our geology, expertise, and highly skilled workforce of Albertans. That is what has made us the responsible producer of choice. We've been a trailblazer in energy leadership for decades. We're known as a world leader, of course, but we're also leaders in technology and innovation. Here in Alberta, we don't believe the future of energy is an either-or conversation. That is what today's announcement is all about. As the Premier said, we're taking another step forward, stepping up to answer the call of rising global energy demand. Canada's first ever drilling accelerator is an industry-led initiative that will help keep us at the forefront of energy technology. Whether it's geothermal, carbon capture, or hydrogen, these new technologies require drilling. The same goes for lithium, helium, and other critical minerals to create batteries and other commodities. Drilling expertise is more important now than ever before, and nobody is better at drilling than those in Alberta. Major industry leaders have already expressed interest in serving as anchor tenants, and we are so glad to have them here with us today. Ever, Tourmaline, and Halliburton. Being here today does remind me of a year and a half ago in Geretsried, Germany, although I will say the weather was more like 40 above than what it is today, where Ever launched the construction of their geothermal facility there. Germany, who had moved too far too fast, trying to phase out fossil fuels without a plan moving forward, was left struggling to provide affordable energy to their citizens. Everest Technology stepped up to meet that demand with their geothermal energy project, technology that came from our very own oil sands and was tested here in rural Alberta, just not too far from Rocky Mountain House. The entire drilling team that I met there was either from Alberta or grew their career and gained their expertise right here in our province. In Alberta's true entrepreneurial spirit, these companies thought, why can't we do more of this? Test the technology here and deploy it at home and around the world. As Premier said, this accelerator will be open to companies big and small, driving breakthroughs in geothermal and many other sectors. It will literally test and develop technologies here that can be used and sold around the world. With up to $50 million from the industry-funded TIER program to get this started, we are signaling that Alberta will continue to be the world's energy capital. This announcement also helps create more good jobs that tap into our world-class workforce, our unique geology, and decades of experience in this area. A single active drilling rig can create 220 jobs and generate over $1 million in tax revenue. Meanwhile, in geothermal alone, cumulative investment is poised to reach $1 trillion by 2050, meaning the potential here is huge. The world needs and wants our energy. It's not about choosing between oil and gas, geothermal, hydrogen, renewables, or nuclear. This is about leading the way in all of those, and that is what today is all about. We are so grateful for our partners for driving this forward. And while one other partner is not here today, the CAOEC, the Canadian Association of Energy Contractors, and Mark Schulz, I want to thank them for their support of this as well. And now I'd like to hand it over to John Redfern with Ever, who will say a few more words about this specific initiative.
Thank you for the intro. Just be very few words. Get my glasses on here. So good morning. Thanks for the intro. It's a pleasure to be here despite the weather, including the weather inside here that seems to be about sub-20. But it's good to be here for this important occasion. On behalf of Ever, I'd like to thank Premier Smith and Minister Schulz for all their support and for making the Alberta Drilling Accelerator a reality. I'd also like to thank the Canadian Association of Energy Contractors and CanGEA for their essential support. Thanks to this government's vision and today's significant investment, established companies and ambitious startups alike will be able to test new geothermal technologies while leveraging Alberta's best-in-class oil service ecosystem. And being around the world, I can tell you it's nothing like drilling here in Alberta. This is crucial that we do this as a global geothermal arms race is underway, as exemplified recently by announcements of new geothermal test facilities in China, the U.S., Japan, New Zealand, Iceland, etc. The list goes on. With total geothermal investment, as we were just told already, poised to reach $1 trillion by 2050, Alberta, through the ADA, will become a hub for technology development that will attract investment and create jobs. By establishing this technology incubator, we're ensuring Alberta remains an international leader in geothermal innovation. Of course, as we've heard, success in this new energy sector is only feasible because of the industry's deep roots here in Alberta. Those roots, as we just were told, have stretched back some 77 years to where we stand here today, the Leduc #1 well, that transformed the province's and the country's energy trajectory. It's the technology and the infrastructure and the skills of ordinary Albertans cultivated over those 77 years that will enable and ensure that the ADA leads these new innovations. Now, these same roots and this very same Leduc well have given inspiration to Ever as well, and through Ever to next-gen geothermal everywhere. How, do you ask? To get personal, one of our early Ever founders, Stephen Lindop, just 7 years ago, inspired his young nephew, Paul Cairns, who's lurking somewhere in the back here, to get Ever involved not just in geothermal in general, but in this specific location at the traditional heart of Alberta's oil industry. Stephen was not an industry expert. He was a high school principal and the mayor of the local town of Devon. His dream, however, was to repurpose Leduc #1 as a geothermal well, as a forward-looking addition to this very discovery center we sit in here today. Sadly, Stephen passed away during the pandemic, but he would be amazed to see the results that his initial encouragement had engendered. And I think his son Zach is here today to bear witness to that. Building on this history of the oil industry and the potential benefits of next-gen geothermal should be felt for generations to come. Even individual Everloops are capable of delivering heat for over a century, ensuring the choices we make today could have similar benefits as Leduc number 1 did over the last 77 years. And finally, even more importantly, it's another lesson as to why we continue to nurture the oil industry of today, not just to provide the energy security we need now, but to form the foundation for future industries like geothermal that will sustain the Alberta advantage for years to come. Thank you. I'll now hand over to the other John.
Thank you. It's nice to be back here. I started my career in NISCU in 34 years ago, so Premier and Minister, thanks for having me. Just to give you a bit of a background about Haliburton, we've been in Western Canada since 1926, so we'll turn 100 in 2026. So very proud of that. Even maintained it through the Depression. When Earl P. Haliburton started the company, one of his famous sayings was, "In short, we intend to maintain leadership in our chosen field." And that intention is still very much alive today, almost 99 years later. NISCU has been the center of Haliburton's drilling technology department for 55 years. We've developed a lot of downhole technology, especially around the motor and geopilot neighborhood. This is a hotbed of activity since the inception of really the Turner Valley oil fields in around 1925. But we've been developing technology. You can see the rigs outside here that have developed technology from old wooden derricks to the high-tech stuff we use today. So we're very excited to be part of this initiative. We think it's very important as we do have an energy transformation, and I did say transformation, not transition. Very much believe that we are in a long duration change over what we're going to be using in the future. So on behalf of Haliburton, I'd like to thank the province, thank Ever Tourmaline for joining us today, and looking forward to being a happy participant. Thanks.
Thanks, John. We'll now take some questions from reporters. There'll be one question, one follow-up. Please state your name and outlet for the record. We'll start here in the room, then we're going to go to the phone. So first at the mic, if you want to go ahead.
Sure, it's Shaylan Skalski with CTV News. Thank you so much for taking my question. Not sure if it's best for the Premier or a Minister or one of the CEOs in the room, but hoping you can better explain why the test site is needed and specific examples of what kinds of technologies could be developed and specifically how they'll help to lower emissions.
You know, I might actually hand this over to John to speak to the specifics, but just a few months ago, we did announce some seed funding for this group to essentially do a feasibility study about what the potential opportunities are here for geothermal and other drilling technologies to be tested here on this site, technology that then could be used and deployed here in Alberta, but also around the world, like what we were seeing in Germany, for example, with Ever's geothermal site. There's a huge amount of opportunity for this, I would say, for two specific reasons. One is, of course, our geology, but the other, given our strong energy industry and our background in this area, it is our workforce and our expertise that make us very unique. And so they were able to take this away, work on a feasibility study about the opportunities and the potential that then exist right here. And I'll maybe hand it over to John to talk a little bit about why this specific site was selected out of the three that they were looking at and what they found in their feasibility study. Yes. Sorry, I should be more specific.
Yeah. Well, you can add it later after. It's not so much specifically this site because we're still finalizing the geographic location. But as we mentioned, there are test sites being put up around the world to take on new generations of geothermal, not just fine-tuning the existing stuff. A lot of it has to do with supercritical geothermal as well. But in our case, a good example would be There's a U.S. site called Forge down in Utah that's funded by the U.S. government, and it's all focused around a lot of our competitors' technology and how to test those. Whereas what we have here is something very unique. We've got a closed-loop system. We need our own test site, and there's no better place on the planet to do it than here because it's the most efficient and most creative and quick turnaround oil service background right here. So we can do things here inexpensively, and we can do things that are focused on the type of solutions that people need in Canada or that Canadian companies are preparing for export.
John G., do you have anything to add about how you might use it?
Yeah, one of the key pieces here around why Alberta. If you look at I agree with everything John said. The ability for us to quickly go out and develop technology to be able to come back in manufacturing, very good manufacturing facilities in Edmonton area. We've got when you look at strength of patents, if we want to develop something, we try and develop it in Canada or U.S., which will co-patent a lot of patents. In 2023, for instance, we were awarded 741 patents just in Halliburton, which leads the industry worldwide. And a lot of that stuff can be developed and co-applied in both Canada and the U.S. at the same time.
Great, thank you.
Shaylin, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, just to follow up to that question and then a separate one if that's okay. Just clarity, in terms of the geographic site of the location, is that where we are today? Has that been finalized? And how confident are you that it'll be ready in time for, I think, 2027 in the news release? And then just my follow-up would actually be for the Premier, slightly off topic. Just coming out of COP29, wealthier countries like ours are facing a lot of criticism for failing to do more when it comes to climate change. There was a lot of criticism about the $300 billion number and saying there wasn't enough progress on a plan to transition away from fossil fuels. I'm wondering what you make of those criticisms, and if you think our country should have done more.
For the first question, location has not been determined. There's been some options. We've just released a report outlining the various criteria for selecting that. But other than that, it's up in the air. But the timeline we're very confident in. We've done a lot of research, and that shouldn't be a problem.
Great, thank you. Well, we aren't transitioning away from fossil fuels. We're transitioning to lower emissions. And so the kinds of technologies that we're looking at, carbon capture, utilization, and storage, direct air capture, you probably saw that during COP, the facility in Innisfail announced that they have already secured contracts with individual companies for direct air capture for those credits. We also know that by supplying the world with cleaner burning LNG, that'll reduce emissions. You may have seen that Shell just won a recent court judgment because it was determined that if they scaled back their production, it would result in an increase in coal use, which would increase world emissions. And so I think we just need to have a broader view of what energy security, energy affordability, and emissions reduction looks like. And I can tell you, leaving it in the ground isn't the solution.
Next at the mic.
Marc-Antoine Leblanc, Radio-Canada. I don't know exactly who to ask to, but when you talk about open access, how does it work? Like, how many companies could use it once ready?
Again, I think this might be a good one for John in terms of the methodology that you have put forward and the work that you've done in your feasibility study on exactly how that's going to work with companies and other jurisdictions coming here to test their technology.
I mean, what we have is a slightly different setup than most of these test sites. Most of them are dictated by academia or by certain key people. This one is pretty open, and it can be open for people from not just Alberta, but from around the world who want to come and test stuff here. So and there is going to be an industry association set up around it to manage it. But it's not something that we as ever are selecting. It'll be this nonprofit association. I think that's about all I can really say about it.
And my follow-up is a little bit off topic, but the question is for the Premier. Regarding Donald Trump and Keystone XL, is your government ready or willing to put money on the table? to help the project?
Look, there's lots of ways that Alberta can de-risk projects, and putting dollars on the table isn't necessarily the best way. As we've seen, for instance, when governments get involved in building pipelines, they can go dramatically over budget. And so we're looking to make connections with the United States to see their appetite for assisting in helping to get more product going into the United States. Maybe de-risking the project involves having an American partner, an American pipeline company partner with our companies here. There's lots of ways for us to also use existing rights of way, existing pipeline access to expand export, whether it's through loops or compression or twinning the line on an existing right of way. And so we're looking at all of those various options. We don't think that the best way of doing it is putting government dollars into it, but I think that there are other things we can do to help change the risk profile. One of the big things is making sure projects can be built in a reasonable period of time. So we're watching with great interest in the United States as they're going through their permitting reform in their bipartisan effort. Unfortunately, it's going to be probably not complete before the end of this year and some of the change of faces in the new year, but if that can be accelerated and we can match that, I think that will be the best way to be able to de-risk projects.
Okay, I think there's another one at the mic. Go ahead.
Lisa with Global Edmonton. Can you elaborate on the locations or sites being considered that are on the table? And would it essentially be a site that's, used for a long period of time, or, with all the drilling being done, would there have to be another site, after a couple of years brought into the mix, or how does that work?
We're just going to bring somebody new. Can you just say your name, and you can come to the mic. Go ahead. But you'll have to say your name so people know who you are and which company you're with.
Good morning. I'm Janine Vanny. I'm Executive Vice President, Corporate Affairs, and accountable for the feasibility with the government. If I could just get the question repeated, please.
Sure. What locations, or could you elaborate on the locations being considered? Obviously, it's not finalized, but, what sites are on the table? And would it be a permanent site, very long term, or, after years of drilling or, doing different projects, would you have to consider another site?
Well, currently we have done a very robust site selection. We started with a very detailed geohazard analysis, and then we layered on a strategic analysis on top of that. Very important when you're innovating and doing new technology to be near local supply chains. So we are going to be near high load corridors and supply hubs, which is very important, and international airports. So a very central location in a very geologically robust area. As far as our vision for the accelerator, on behalf of the industry's vision is that this is just the beginning. And we really hope that it can be active for a long period of time. Right now, we're looking at this initial $50 million investment, and we're going to crowd in private capital from private investment internationally. And then we're really hoping to see this take off and become a long-term facility where potentially we could, it could be a leader for geothermal technology development and maybe even education. But currently the site contemplated is small. We don't need a large surface area to build one pad. And that's, yeah, thank you.
Can you mention when it's likely to be announced so people know when they don't know the location?
We anticipate being able to announce the location in Q1 of 2025. And the reason it's not announced right now is you need to make sure you cross your T's, dot your I's, and make sure you can access the land, do proper stakeholder engagement, engage with the community, engage with Indigenous groups, and we are only midway through that part of the scope. I do not see any risk in acquiring land for the Alberta Drilling Accelerator.
And my follow-up would be for the Premier. You continue to double down on the oil and gas industry in Alberta, and you want to grow it. Do you have a plan B, though, when it comes to renewable energy and maybe, adding a focus to that industry, or is it full steam ahead with oil and gas?
It's all of the above. Alberta's going to continue to grow. We know that our electricity demand, just even on the normal case scenario, is going to be 25,000 megawatts of power that we're going to need installed, which is about double the amount of consumption we have today. We know that there are lots of opportunities to bring on potentially small modular nuclear, which we're supporting, geothermal, which we have supported. We are looking as well at ways of building interties so that we can bring in more power between British Columbia as well as our neighbors to the east and to the south. We are looking at carbon capture with our natural gas plants. There's a growing industry in hydrogen that could potentially be used for natural gas as well. So it really is all of the above.
Okay, we have time for one more in the room. So Sean, go ahead.
Hi, Sean Amato with City News for the Premier. So the $50 million is from the TIER Fund, I believe, which is essentially a carbon tax on industrial companies. You're obviously not a fan of carbon taxes, but is this a case of carbon tax working? And can they actually be a good thing if the money is spent wisely?
Retail carbon taxes don't work because there aren't very many options for consumers to switch. When you've got a retail carbon tax, especially as it's being levied right now on home heating, the tax is 4 times the amount of the base price of gas. And any option to move out of natural gas is tens of thousands of dollars for an individual homeowner. So all it is a punitive tax. Same thing with diesel and gasoline taxes, that you can't just snap your fingers and make other options available. Even if everybody wanted a zero emissions vehicle tomorrow, there just isn't the production to make that happen. And so those are the reason why we've been opposed to the retail carbon tax. But industrial pricing in this province has been in place since 2007. And it's been able, with the support of industry, to provide some really important incentives for companies to move faster and accelerating technologies that save emissions because they get a credit. And those who don't end up paying into the fund, and then we're able to use it on their behalf to support these kinds of innovations. So we're supportive of that kind of approach on industrial pricing.
Thank you. Our friends in Calgary are looking for an update on the Green Line, please. I understand you met with the mayor this morning. Can you tell us how that went and what's the update on that project, please?
I've not met with the mayor this morning. I know that Devin Drishan met with her last week, and we do have a regular committee meeting scheduled every couple of weeks to get an update on the project. At the moment, what we're looking at is getting agreement on the above-ground alignment, because when we brought in ICOM, one of the things they had told us is they had to do the same thing in Austin, a very expensive underground alignment at a cost of $1 billion per kilometer. It just became over budget, so they had to re-engineer it above ground, either at grade or elevated. Elevated costs about $300 million a kilometer. At grade costs about $100 million a kilometer. And so when we can come up with the alignment, we'll know how much additional dollars we have to see how much further south we can go. But our objective is to try to get it all the way to Seaton. And if we can engineer and come up with an agreement on the downtown alignment above ground, we'll be able to build more kilometers out. So that's what we're working on, is getting those proposals on the table, getting the city in alignment with where we think it needs to go. And so that's the next stage.
Great. We have time for a couple more questions. So with that, we're going to go to the phones. Operator, first caller, please.
Your question comes on the line of Don Braid from the Calgary Herald. Please go ahead.
Premier, thanks for taking my call. One step after another, it looks like you and your government have moved out of any hope or compromise or compliance with federal policy. We've got of course, the Impact Assessment Act Challenge, which you just enabled last Friday, and also the other issues. So I'm just wondering if you give us a preview of when you're going to come back with your comeback on the emissions cap. There are going to be some measures. And what kind of climate can we expect, if that's not too strong a word, next year in the lead up to the federal election? It looks like all-out intergovernment warfare on this front.
Well, look, I mean, my position hasn't changed from the very first conversation I had with the Prime Minister on one of the first days that I got elected. And it was, let's get aligned around a 2050 target, which is what most of our trading partners are working towards. And increasingly, you're seeing some adjustments in policy in Europe as reality is setting in about the need for natural gas as a fuel, lower emissions fuel, and some of the other innovations that we have. And so my position hasn't changed. We came to the table hoping that we would be able to get alignment, and their position hasn't changed either. They want to bring through policies that are unachievable in the short term, which will result in a shut-in of our production. And we're just simply not going to allow for that. They can't invade our constitutional jurisdiction to develop our resources, and they can't invade our constitutional jurisdiction to manage our electricity grid. So I think there is a pathway to compromise, but they're the ones not willing to compromise. And so we're going to have to assert our rights to make sure that we can maintain control over our resources. And the time frame for that?
Can you give us some
Yeah,
idea?
you'll see next week.
Yes.
You'll see next week. There'll be some more things that we announce. I believe I'm giving a speech in the legislature on Monday next week.
Will there be a legal challenge involved, or will it be more practical action on the ground, as it were?
Would be all of the above. I mean, we take things to court when we believe that we've got a strong case. In the case of an emissions cap, we cannot go to court until the actions are in law. But, you know, they've been telegraphing since we started writing them letters in 2022. They've been telegraphing the direction that they're going with emissions. We've been working. I've written, I think, 3 letters. I think the minister behind me is Minister Schulz has written 3 letters. I've had 2 in-person meetings with the Prime Minister. We've had a bi-weekly we've had a monthly meeting with DMs to coordinate, and they haven't moved towards wanting to find compromise. So we're kind of at the end of the negotiation compromise phase, and we're now in the protection of our jurisdiction and protection of our industry phase. So I would say that the litigation will come if they continue to persist in putting this into law. The regulations are in the consultation phase right now, but I think they're indicating they want it in law in the new year, and so we'll launch a legal challenge immediately after. But we've got other things that we'll do in the meantime.
Thanks, Premier. We have time for one more question, so operator, last caller, please.
The next question comes from the line of Emma Greeny from the Globe and Mail. Please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. Just on the geothermal side, I mean, geothermal has kind of been held back a bit because it's pricey, right? It's expensive. I'm just curious from a technology perspective whether something like this could change that and potentially expand the use of geothermal.
John R.?
Yes. Yes, it could. That's the whole point. There's incremental improvements we're making with geothermal, but through things like the accelerator, we're talking about fundamental new technology that can drastically reduce the cost of it. So, again, the answer is yes.
Well, I think, Emma, just for your question, a good example is back when Ever did announce their project in Germany, we had a number of folks in the media say, why are we not doing this here right now? The fact of the matter is, again, Germany moved so far so quickly that they were bringing coal back on to help provide energy for residents, and also the cost of geothermal, especially just where it was at on the technology side, was high. But at that point, that was the option they had. We have to move forward in a way that make sure that energy remains reliable. Of course, geothermal is a reliable baseload energy, and do it in an affordable way. And by being able to test that technology here in Alberta and move that along, it will move it along quicker and ideally help bring down the cost so that we can look at those solutions here and add those to our energy mix as well.
Emma, do you have a follow-up?
Great, thanks. I do have, as if I didn't have a follow-up. In what world? I actually want to throw back to one of the earlier questions that you were asked, Premier, regarding KXL. Obviously, as you say, there are lots of ways Alberta could support more pipeline access. But will you rule out putting money on the table, given what happened with the last time around?
Look, when I talk to the industry says one of the ways that we could potentially be helpful is being a guaranteed shipper on that line. So think about that. If we're able to say, yes, we can guarantee that we will use your line, they can take that to the bank and they can use that as a way of de-risking a project. And that doesn't require us to put any dollars on the table. It just allows for us to make sure that they know that our existing production is going to expand so that they can continue to fill their lines. So that's why I said there are other ways to be able to de-risk a project as opposed to just putting direct grant subsidies in.
Great. Thanks, everyone. And that's all the time we have today.
Thanks, everyone.